Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In. We are brought to you by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike gear. Brought to you by Resolite, the mat company, resolite.com, Pure and Clean Sports. Best mat cleaner in the game, and Jocko Fuels. GT, I'm down 24 pounds since Jan 1. Still got a way to go, but progress is progress, and Jocko Fuel's been a big part of that, so we want to thank them. Joined today by my good friend Grant Turner. Mark is on the train. GT, we were talking ahead of time, sort of like getting our ducks in a row on the order to talk about things, and there's a lot that we may not even get to, but let's start with international style wrestling. 72 kilos women's bracket. Alex Glaude was sitting in Final X. Amit Elor just won the World Team Trials in Louisville to face her, and now I guess this was fairly well known. I had heard about it at the US Open. I know you did too, that Glaude is injured and will not be able to wrestle. So it must have happened, I don't know, like I guess I didn't hear it at the US Open, so I heard it shortly afterward. I think we heard it at Pan Am's because she wrestled at US Open, sorry. But we heard it, she must have gotten injured shortly thereafter. And so now Amit Elor is, per the USA Wrestling qualification process, is our world team member at 72 kilograms.
Yeah, so she basically just has to show up at Final X, make weight, and then she's the world team member. That's it. Like, go out there, get her hand raised, and that's it.
She actually has to do that, though, huh?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay. And I guess while we're talking about it, the Mike Mock Heidley wrestle off has been postponed. One of those guys is banged up a little bit, I guess.
I haven't heard that yet. But if that is true, then they probably will do some sort of like specific wrestle off at maybe like Fargo. They've done that in the past.
Yeah.
Something to that effect where you're just like, okay, well, this is what will happen.
Last year was Jackson Vito there, I think. And by the way, Jax graduates from high school this weekend. So there's
congratulations to Jax on graduating high school after being a collegiate national champion. Thank you.
I'm laughing just at the absurdity of the accomplishment. So nobody, like, I'm actually friends with Jackson Howard. Please don't send me hate mail. But yeah, the absurdity of that is real. So, all right, New Worlds location change. So this was something that you had clued me in on. I texted Joe Russell, and basically it's the same weekend, Grant, but they're moving it from Bahrain to Kazakhstan. Do I have that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that one of the thoughts was if they moved it, they might move the date. And then if they move the date, that might allow some of our athletes to do U23s and senior worlds. And I guess because they're right now they're like a weekend apart. So there's really just no way you could do it. And the Jaden Coxes and Joe Russells of the world would probably be happy, but I don't think doesn't look like that's going to happen. The dates are going to stay the same. So for most of us, I would imagine the time zone between Kazakhstan and Bahrain is maybe an hour or two at the most, right? Maybe nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be maybe a little bit of difference, but not too much.
Right. So, I mean, basically you're staying up and watching wrestling in the middle of the night, which is, pretty standard when you're over there. So, okay. A lot of news out of Iowa State. On the athlete front, Drew Ayala went out of the portal, moved from Iowa to Iowa State, followed his brother Drake. Not surprising at all. On the men's side, Javier Maldonado was hired as a coach. Basically, if you want to do the numbers, Dresser was 1, and Metcalf was 2, and St. John was 3. 2 went to 1, 3 went to 2, and Maldonado comes in as your number 3. And then you just told me this. I don't know if it happened this morning or whenever, but Cash Wilkie, one of the original Border Brawlers, by the way, was just named the director of operations for the women's program. And we've talked about this, I think, off air, but Ali St. John was the DOPS for the men's program. So if he's not sure what to do, he's kind of got a great mentor there, right?
Yeah, and then once again, I think Cash has been the assistant coach to Jake Cadle at William Penn and Iowa Wesleyan prior to this, so very much kind of in the same family of coaches, very familiar with each other. But it does say like D-ops and assistant wrestling coach. So I don't know exactly how that all will shake out on how many people Allie can bring in on the women's staff side, if it's going to be 3 full-timers or, a little bit of this, but definitely worthy of note that, Jake and Cash had been together while at William Penn creating the William Penn wrestling program.
Yeah, for sure. So the other thing that you and I, we didn't quite get to it, but I think we're going to have time to talk about it. And I'd rather just kind of run through U20s and 23s on the back end is this Tarleton State thing. So, for people that don't know, Tarleton State, depending on who you listen to, we're going to have a Division I wrestling program. And this happens a lot. I think it happens a lot in non-revenue sports where there's a lot of people that are either misled or frankly just not told the truth. But the other problem of that is that a lot of the people in the wrestling community are not business people. And so things are not written. There's not contracts. Well, listen, man, my word is my bond. And you and I both know we have people that have said our word is our bond, and it hasn't been. So bottom line is they raised a bunch of money, recruited a bunch of kids. Chose that over other options. And now it's, we're still going to have a club, but we're not going to have a program. And it leaves a lot to be desired by everyone involved. So I don't know if you've talked to anybody. Leith went on the Bader show, gave his side of it. I know Leith from his time at Mizzou. I talked to a couple Division I coaches that strongly supported Leith and said, yeah, we're positive he was lied to. But one coach said it would have been a good idea for him to have a business guy as his assistant, or even just a lawyer, somebody in the process, making sure that all I's were dotted and T's were crossed, because this does affect kids' lives and families' lives. So I dropped a piece of paper here. I'm dipping out for 2 seconds. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think the biggest thing when you come to working with athletic departments and basically starting new sports, or, once again, it has already been a part of the club scenario, being able to compete for the club national championships. I think to your point, I don't necessarily know, like, it gets to be really sticky as, you have small staffs in collegiate wrestling, and not all of the wrestling assistant coaches they haven't passed the bar, and they haven't been a part of a Fortune 500 company. Like, these are like different conversations that sometimes maybe a lot gets assumed, and not necessarily have like a third-party lawyer as an assistant coach trying to talk to your athletic director, or like the board of regents, or however your school is set up. I think it's just a very interesting scenario that like non-revenue generating sports are having these conversations at length with athletic directors or presidents of the university in order to even get a program started, let alone like get one started and then pull the rug out from underneath the coach. It's a very sensitive issue when you have people's lives, and like there's a lot of kids that have chose to go to the school because maybe of their degree option, or they want to wrestle and represent that university. It's never a good conversation to have with anybody in order to try to achieve, you're no longer welcome at the school, but if you'd like to stay, we can still help with your education. It's like, I don't necessarily think that goes over very well.
Yeah, I don't want to steer it, but it feels that specific conversation feels like the Cal Bap thing, you know. So but we won't go there today. I don't think there's a lot of new news there. It's a real problem, man, because like not only did these kids decide, but they raised over $1 million, right? And so, we raise money for our event, and like, if I said, hey, we're not going to give the money to veterans, we're going to give them to rescue cats out of trees, I think there's a percentage of people that would want their money back. Maybe 100% of those people would want their money back. And you have to, so with this, there's a pile of money there, and I don't know what they're going to do with it. And that happens all the time. you see these things like 501c3 shut down, or they don't file their paperwork, or, the director was whatever. And, the people that donated $100 that really believed in it, for some people, it's harder to donate $100 than it is for another person to donate $1,000. And I certainly don't want to get into capitalism and socialism, but for a lot of these people, the amount of money they gave was meaningful to them. And even if it was throwaway money, even if it was just you and me donating $20, it's not right that this money, there's not going to, I really doubt there's going to be accounting of where this money goes. And I don't know if the school didn't do that just to cash in $1 million too. It's difficult. Like, you and I both know some people that are fairly wealthy. We've had, the Art Martoris and Andy Bars of the wrestling world, and they have kept wrestling afloat in a lot of ways, especially international wrestling. So it's I don't know that there's an end in sight on this. I mean, I guess the end is in sight and that it's over, but how this is going to play out with the finances, I think it'll just kind of go away. And I ethically, I just don't think that's right. So it's super frustrating. Okay, U20s and U23s are this weekend, GT. They are in Geneva, Ohio. So let me present the screen here. So it's important for people to understand in this tournament that this is like Final X, but the old Final X, GT, where like you won the bracket, and now I got to wrestle through a bracket to get to you, and then there's either 1 or 0 days rest. I mean, I'm explaining that correctly?
Yeah. I mean, once again, I think it's like there's a lot of I would say nuances to our world team selection process when it comes to like senior level or like what they've done at the US Open or world team trials and all these other things. So it's something that if you're anyone confused about these processes, you're not alone sometimes when you're like, well, why is it like this? Or why is it like this? And it's like, well, there's a lot of nuance to how the world teams are selected when you are participating at a senior level or like previous world team member or all these other things. So it's very, very confusing at times.
So the people that are sitting, we'll go through the names, but also these are the people that won the U20 tournament in Las Vegas last weekend of April. So that's Isaiah Cortez, Elijah Cortez, Bo Bassett, Landon Robideau, Jaden James, Ryan Burton, Aiden Sinclair, Jimmy Mastney, Michael Boyle, Kobe Merrill. So if you're a college fan, Cortez is Cornell, Cortez Cornell, Bassett VTech, Robideau Oklahoma State, Jaden James Penn State, Ryan Burton Virginia Tech, Aiden Sinclair Missouri, Jimmy Mastney Iowa State, Michael Boyle Ohio State, Kobe Merrill Iowa State. And some of these kids are already there. Some of these kids are committed and haven't shown up yet, but that's and some of them, I think Jimmy Mastney's a junior, like and Boyle, they have another year left in high school. So all different possibilities. So these brackets are freaking loaded. I'm just going to give some names so people, I mean, this stuff's all going to be streamed just like normal, but at 57 GT, you've got Mills, Munaretto, Zeke Witt, Botero, Burnett, Schwab, Aslikian, Farnsworth, Weber, Paul Kenny, Rockland Zinkin, Ronnie Ramirez, Rylan Seacrest. Like, I don't even know how many guys that is, but that's one of the guys I named. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So the 4 versus 13, 5 versus 12, and so on. I mean, the round of 16 is going to be bonkers here. And then obviously the quarter semis finals are going to be insane. And if you're Cortez, it's nice. You just, you get your warm-up match in day 2 and you get to skip the meat grinder, right?
Yeah, I mean, those are some heavy hitters and a lot of people with a lot of credentials behind their names. That's going to be an interesting weight class to see, especially like I'm seeing like a Ronnie Ramirez who wrestled 133 going down to 57 kilos rather than 61 kilos.
That was surprising to me.
Yeah, I think that's definitely noteworthy for sure. As you look at some of these brackets, you're going to see some of these guys that were at collegiate weight classes moving around for potentially even freestyle that you might not have ever seen before.
Yeah, and Spratley's in the U23 at the same weight, so it's interesting if Ronnie Ramirez is going to try to beat out Spratley next year. You know, because normally in the summertime you wrestle up, you don't wrestle down from your college weight because you have to maintain it less times. Okay, 61, it's small. It's basically, to me, it's Seidel and Dean Anderson here. Those are the names that really stick out to me. By the way, GT, do we have a pick here at 57?
Not a chance. There's so many great names at that weight class right now already. You just be like basically throwing darts at a dartboard.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, 61, it's basically Seidel, Dean Anderson. No disrespect to these other people, Carter Pearson. I'll pick Seidel at 61, though. I feel like that's one I can sort out, and I would take Dean Anderson to make the finals, barring the pin system, putting them on the same side of the bracket. You had same, different?
Yeah, no, I'm just kind of looking at the names as we kind of look at the.
That's the whole 61 bracket, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I think that like Seidel, you got a chance to see him at the World Team Trials in Louisville, wrestling at the senior level. I think he's pretty special. So I would give a lot of nod to him as someone that could definitely make a world team at that weight class.
Agreed. Okay, 65. Arseni Kikanu, Bassett, Shepard, Youngblood, Wolbert, Sam Herring, we haven't seen in a long time, and DeCraker. I mean, I would imagine Bassett is an overwhelming favorite here, considering he's in Final X for the senior level. So, I mean, Shepard's committed to Penn State. Kikanu's committed to Cornell, I'm almost positive. Wolbert's Michigan. Sam Herring, Penn State. DeCraker, Minnesota. I imagine this is Bassett's weight. He's beaten DeCraker. Him and Herring were teammates. That would be kind of interesting if Herring had maybe the formula to try to slow him down a little bit, but I don't know. So this feels like, and Wolbert's, I think, wrestled him in the finals of Fargo or, I mean, some big tournament. They've wrestled several times, I believe. Anything I'm missing here?
I mean, like I think a Bo Bassett already performing at such a high level at the senior level. Do you think he does a triple team situation, or if he makes the world, like the senior level team, does he continue to do like U20, U23 and seniors, or is that something where like you have this tournament and you kind of maybe forego one or two, or if you just like, that's an interesting perspective at this weight class where he's going to have options depending upon what happens. And whether or not he wants to have two shots at a world title at, U20s and or U23s, because as the highest ranking senior, he has the ability to make the U23 team already, being, basically in Final X at the senior level. So he'll have that shot no matter what, if he wants it.
A good way to say it is the one team he's on right now is the U23 team. And if he won all three, I think it's the least likely one he would go on because of the dates. Like, for sure, he's going to go to the seniors, right? Like, I mean, if you can only do one, you go to the seniors. And then the U23 and seniors are literally a week apart, but the U20s would give him enough time. So if he were to make all three, I would imagine he would go 20 and senior and skip 23.
Yeah, but 23 is just like, it's back to back. So you're probably going to do an acclimation camp. Like, you're not going to be, even though like it would be really awesome to compete on U.S. soil for a world title at the U23s in Vegas. I just don't think timing wise. Also, like if he gets hurt at U23s, like Team USA is not gonna probably let that happen.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So, I mean, a lot of it will shake out here. I mean, the one team he is on, though, is the one that we think most likely he wouldn't go on. I guess the other option is he somehow doesn't make this team and Real Woods wins, which is a real possibility or genuine possibility. And so then some of those decisions are taken out of his hands. Okay. 70 kilos. Desena, David Gleason, who beat Melvin Miller, and then, took 7th or 8th. Jake Miller, Landon Robideau, Melvin Miller, Seth Mendoza, Vince Bouzakis. So there's some banger names here, GT. I would imagine Robideau, Melvin Miller, Seth Mendoza would probably be and Gus Cardinal from Valiant, but those would kind of be my top 3 right there. Seeing from Lake Highland Prep, you see a lot of representation from them with the Craker as well. So, everybody thought Melvin Miller was going to wrestle Robideau at Vegas, and it didn't happen because of Gleason. So, and again, I have to go back and scroll quickly. The guy's waiting here, so I don't understand this. Why it says U20 men's freestyle finalist? Bassett is listed as waiting, and Robideau is listed as waiting, and then they're in the bracket. So does that mean, I guess they're not wrestling, right? They just put them in here by accident?
I think that's just the entry list. So meaning that they're a part of the bracket, and you'll see their names listed here, but they may be the people that are waiting out. So it's just a list of entries, I believe.
Okay. So Robideau is not wrestling in this bracket. So, I would assume Melvin Miller and Mendoza are probably the co-favorites here. Is that how you would see it?
Yeah. I think as far as the names are concerned, I think that's a really good, I would put those, that would be some really good odds, I would say, as you kind of look at people that have already kind of wrestled and been at the senior level, or just big names that you can kind of watch at. Those would be the ones that I would see coming through the mini tournament in order to get to Robideau.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, 74, Cam Howard, Cody Rutledge, Ladarian Lockett, both from Oklahoma State, Matt Crossan, Cassiope, Will Denny from North Carolina State, and the winner gets Jaden James. Somebody was running a video of Jaden James losing to Lockett last year. By tech, but people get better. Ladarian made the Olympic trials, the senior Olympic trials at 24. Jaden James just had a magnificent run, beat Joe Seeley, and then beat Quincy Monday, and went really close with David Carr. So I'm guessing Lockett's the favorite here.
Yeah, I think probably just based off of the freestyle prowess that he was a part of the Pan Am team a year ago. But I would say that probably Cam Howard is somebody that I would watch in this bracket to see what shakes out.
Yeah.
And then of course I think like a Will Denny would be interesting to see where he lands in the bracket, to see where his tough matches would be at. But I would probably put a lot of emphasis on watching Ladarian just because of his freestyle prowess.
It's possible you could see some teammate matchups, like Ladarian could be the 1 and Rutledge could be the 4 seeds, or the 2-3. I don't really, this pinpoint thing has got me all, I don't know. And then if Cam Howard were to win the bracket, he and Jaden are both KD guys. So some things to keep an eye out here. 79, Asher Cunningham, Bruno Cassiope, Danny Heiser, who lost the first round in Vegas and then won 12 matches all by tech. Emmett Sherlock, Carini DeBolt, Ryan Burton. Ryan Burton is sitting, though, so he's not in this bracket per se. And him and Cunningham had a really close match. Cunningham took second out there. Heiser took third, and Cunningham and Heiser hit each other round 1. And then Heiser came back, like I said, to a 256-person backside bracket. So Carini's the number 1 high school kid in the country at 175. DeBolt has always been right there with Melvin Miller. Not close to him, but right behind him in the rankings. So I would imagine it's Cunningham, Heiser, DeBolt, I would guess Sherlock are probably the seeds there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see kind of, as you said, like the pinpoint system on who gets set up on the opposite sides of things. I hope that like some of the results from, the trials out in Vegas are a big determining factor on not necessarily seeing those matchups in the second round and or quarters when, we don't necessarily need to have that be a part of that trial system, especially when Burton is sitting out. Throw him outside of this conversation. Right. Like he's already sitting there waiting, but, like with basically Asher Cunningham and Heiser, like they should be separated. I don't want to see necessarily a matchup of them being, they could be 2-3 depending upon what happens, but it's hard for, kind of fans to say, well, that's just a matchup that we don't necessarily need to see in the second round.
They should not be in the second round, but it could very likely be the finals, like you're saying, or the semifinals. So for sure. Okay. 86, Sinclair is sitting. Aaron Stewart, Mantanona, Mikey White, Waylon Kressel, kind of the four names that stick out to me here. GT.
Yeah.
I would imagine that Mantanona is a pretty heavy favorite, Division I All-American. Mikey White versus Aaron Stewart would be a fun match to watch. Kressel's going to end up at Northern Iowa. Mikey White's going to end up at Oklahoma State. Aaron Stewart, I think, is still going to University of Illinois. I don't think I heard differently.
Yeah, because I believe Brock Montanona got, was it 5th this year at 84? And Sinclair got 3rd at the NCAAs. It'd be interesting on like these, like some of the high school recruits, Michael White, Waylon Kressel, like where they wind up getting seeded or separated out. But this is a very powerful weight class. There's a lot of talent here.
Yeah. And Sinclair sitting. So, like the other thing is this, like I'm very interested in the results of these brackets, but it's a tall order to win this bracket and then go beat the guy waiting. So it's a lot. 92, Adam Waters, who had just beaten Mikey White at the Pittsburgh Classic. Jimmy Masney is sitting. Branson Johns, your All-American from Maryland. Carson Tompkins. Lad Holman. Lincoln Jip, who had the crazy match with Jimmy Masney in the finals. And then Tanner Hodgkins, who's going to Oklahoma State. So Tompkins is Air Force. Lad Holman. Is Lad Holman also Oklahoma State?
I'm not sure.
I think he is. So
I think I did see something like that, but
I think that's right. So, Jip made the finals. Waters is going to be moving up because he wrestled like 189 and this is 202. So, that's a lot of weight. So, I would think Jip, Holman, Hodgkins, and Waters maybe Branson John might be the favorite. He's Division I All-American, right?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be a very interesting weight. I think I could see a rematch of the finals with Jip and Masney.
Yeah,
at this weight. Pretty crazy match that if you go back and watch that one. I watched that one.
Yeah, I was there for it like live, and there were the Jip side felt there was some inconsistency. Like I was with Spencer Steiner that night about. And one of the guys was winning like by 4 and got double legged, and all he had to do was bail and gave up a 5. I think that's what Jip did. And, I think the score is like 16-15, 15-14. There's a bunch of stuff going on there. Branson John might be, he's definitely going to be a factor too. I don't care how you place at nationals. You don't place at nationals without being good at wrestling. Okay. 97's really small. Michael Boyle, he's sitting. He beat Platt in the finals because that was where Ramos was with him. I know Carter Brown from Missouri's had a good summer. Little surprised. Well, no, I guess this is right. He's a 215-pounder. This is 213. So, I would think Platt gets to Boyle for the rematch here.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you there.
Yeah. And then heavyweight Merrill sitting. We're going to see Mrs. Dean Bechtol's been nationally ranked. Drayshawn Ross is number 1 guy. Jacob Levy was number 5 guy a year ago. Mike Mako's the number 2 or 3 guy. Ryland Kuhn. Shout out Kansas City, Missouri. He's at the Air Force. He qualified for D1s or not even qualified for D1s. He was in the starting lineup as a true freshman at heavyweight and, won a match or two at the Big 12s. But this feels like Merrill waiting for Ross and Ross probably beating Mako in the finals of the mini tournament.
That's going to be, smaller weight class, but some heavy names.
Yeah, 7 guys. So 6 guys because Merrill's not in the bracket. So, I
Probably
think
going to have like Ross and Mako 1-2, and then they got a bye to the semifinals, and then we'll see who winds up on either side of the bracket.
Yeah, my guess would be so Kuhn took 7th or 8th at the tournament, so I think it just depends. But, I think Levy placed ahead of him. It'll be interesting. I don't know a lot about the Ashton Honold kid, so I think he's the 6, and then Bechtold, Levy, Kuhn, or some combination of 3, 4, 5. So, yeah. Okay, U23s, the number of names in these brackets are absurd, and then the number of guys that you've kind of heard of is absurdly low. So I don't know that we go through all this. I think what's important to just there's a couple other things I think I'd rather talk about, frankly, but the U20, here's the U20 finalist. Where's the U23 finalist? I don't know that I see them on here, Grant. Do you see them?
I don't think that they have them listed. I think that there was just a preview.
Okay. Okay. So, I guess we'll just hit a few names just so people want to see guys. So U23s, like Zeke Witt is doubling up. I thought that was interesting. He's going to wrestle both brackets. Quintero's a name that we've seen. Joey Cruz, if you're an Iowa guy. Louis Gill, Mac Mauger from Mizzou, Max Gallagher from UPenn. Spratley. I think of the names I've said so far, I would think Spratley's the favorite. Vinny Kilcarry, who may very well may be the 125-pounder for Ohio State this year, or Mills. I just don't think I saw a pod Buzakis did, and they said he had to lose like 13 pounds the last day of nationals. And you and I had talked about that, watching him just boat race Dean Peterson. Like, well, let's see when he has to make weights 12 times this year. 61. Brady Rourke, a national qualifier for South Dakota State. Davis Mutika, nice to see him getting big. He was at SEM and UPenn and was tall and lanky and skinny, and so it's nice to see him put some size on. It was, I met his dad. Like, you kind of knew he was going to get bigger. J.J. McComas. We haven't seen J.J. McComas wrestling forever. Koufax Christensen. And this is Nick Buzakis. Is it this weight? My guess is Owen McMullen. I would think Buzakis is a pretty heavy favorite there just from reading this. 65. Do you think we need to go through this, or just people be aware of all this, GT? What do you think?
Just be aware of it, because it's probably like, 1,000 names. If you continue to scroll, it will be forever.
Okay.
And once you get to like some of the middleweights, like 65, 70, 74, this is a representation of like everybody from every division. And once again, there's a lot of names here, and there's a lot of really, really talented kids from all divisions, the D2, Division 3, NAI, JUCO guys.
Yeah.
That are going to be represented at this weight class. So it's going to be very interesting. These are big brackets. Once the brackets are fully released, it's going to, you have to span out and look at the entirety of it. So this is, when you look at maybe the U20 trials or finalist brackets, and then the U23s are just 10 times the size.
Yeah. And it says here the brackets are much smaller than the U20. The U20s are smaller than 23s because of the qualification criteria are much stricter. And there's some weird things that'll happen here. I don't want to criticize anybody, but there's some names that have made a U23 world team that like never really started for a Division I team. So this is kind of like almost like a weird loophole thing where some stuff happens. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, let me see if I can pull this up. So let's talk a little bit about the national duels. I'm going to see if I can pull up their website. Okay, here it is. All right. So I can do this now. So you can see this here graphically. I'll also read this off. So it's almost easier just to go through. We talked about this briefly, Grant, the other day. Number 1, Penn State not coming. This, when I say number 1, this is how they finished at the end of last year. Because like Virginia Tech is 11th, and I don't think any of us think they're going to take 11th this year. Oklahoma State, number 2, coming. Nebraska, 3, out. Iowa, 4, out. Ohio State in. Stanford in. Michigan, out. Okay, so 4 of the top 7 are not coming. Okay. Then you get a nice run here of the 8 through 14 teams that are all coming. Iowa State, Minnesota, North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, Wyoming, Arizona State, Mizzou. Then there's a brutal run of 15 to 25 where they're all out except Little Rock, which was 22. So Illinois, Lehigh, Columbia, Cornell, Penn, Princeton, Indiana, American, West Virginia, and Air Force are all out. Number 26, Pitt is in. 27, Rider is out. 28, Navy is out. 29, Purdue is out. 30, OU. 30, tied for 31, North Carolina is in. Northern Iowa was tied for 31. And they were 33rd. They're out. Maryland is in. George Mason is out. Rutgers is in. So did a little math. You have 2 of the top 5, 6 of the top 10, 10 of the top 14, 13 of the top 30, and you had to go down to 34 to get to your 16. This is one thing that surprised me a little bit. 6 Big 12 teams, 5 ACC teams, 4 Big 10 teams, which is, it felt like last year was a much heavier Big 10. And I that has to be, GT, because Nebraska and Iowa were there last year, and Michigan. So, and then 1 Pac-12 team. So I'll give you my thoughts on this. I think they should have left it in November. I think when you move it to December, I get why you did it. You're trying to get Penn State. You're trying to make it a real national duels. The argument that Penn State made about we need to get away from these world championships and stuff like that has validity. And the coaches at all these college teams are being paid to put guys on the podium in their college uniforms. Like the donors want that. Like I think most donors, if you said, hey, I'm going to give $1 million. And they're like, okay, what do you want? A national championship team or an Olympic champion? I think 99 out of 100 would pick a national championship team. I mean, you sell gear for a living. You probably sell more college gear than you do USA gear. I mean, it's like, that's just a fact of life. And I think they have a problem because they keep this date and interferes with finals. That's why a bunch of these high-level academic institutions didn't go. And GT, you and I have heard a lot of rumblings. We heard this at Coralville, that there's a very strong likelihood that the trials next year, the Olympic trials, are going to be moved to December. And there'll be some college teams that were really happy that like they had the Jax Forrests and the Aiden Valencias and the Bo Bassett's and the Jaden Jameses on their team. And now it's like, man, it's right. It's like right smack dab in the middle of the season, right before finals. And I don't think anybody you can't go to both, right? Like if you go to this and you have your team can go to this, but like Bo Bassett is going to be in the Olympic trials. Okay. It doesn't matter when they hold it. He's going to be in it. And he's probably not going to wrestle in this meet the week before or the week after the trials. Definitely not the week before. Maybe the week after if he comes out of it unscathed. But, Your thoughts on the field, how they got here, all this kind of stuff.
Well, I think, for the National Dual Invitational being the first time that we ever got a chance to have that be a property last year, I thought it was a great kickoff to the wrestling season. I thought it was well constructed. It looked like a national tournament from the standpoint of like it was in a big arena. The mats were all set up. The teams were ready to go. They were all competing for prize money. So I thought it was a really, really great representation of what, really good team dual collectiveness would look like. And that like we spoke to, some of these teams, they got to be a top 10 tournament team because they had 5 guys that were in the hunt for All-American and or national titles. But their other 5 weight classes weren't necessarily as dynamic. So you're seeing a lot of maybe lopsided duels between teams where you have really good individuals and you have really good matchups, but maybe as a team component, they're not as highly ranked, where you could have a tournament scenario where a team has one good guy, but he's always going to make the finals. He could be in the NCAA finals, but they might not win a single duel as a team that year.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really good representation of different conferences. A lot of power conferences are represented here. With 3 heavy or 4 heavy, ACC schools represented. There's some really good Big 10 schools represented. There's some really good Big 12 schools represented. I think there's that new potential Western Regional Conference being formed with the Pac-12 and a few of the leftover Big 12 or non-affiliated programs of the Big 12. So it's a really cool field, in my opinion. It might not have the best teams, meaning the Penn States and the Iowas and Nebraska being trophy teams in the past couple of years. But once again, if you've ever gone to a dual meet, like parity is imperative for like these matchups. And I think you're going to get a little bit more parity when you have teams that were finished in the nation 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, where all of those matches become like monumental swings, where if your guys are ranked at 74, but they're the 8 and the 9 seeds, like both of those teams need those guys to win in order to win a duel.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a lot more of that, not necessarily like Davino versus Jax, but we might be able to see that in the finals.
Yeah.
But you might not have that exact matchup between, Maryland and Pittsburgh. And it's just using 2 names that were at the far right side.
No, you're right. There's a couple of mathematical things here that are interesting. Okay, so Princeton was 20th with 20 points, and Cornell was 18th with 21.5. And let's say that Cornell gets 1 less pin. Princeton's ranked above them or places above them. And I don't think anybody thinks Princeton has a better dual meet team than Cornell. So that's to your point, right? Like if Mark Anthony McGowan wins the finals, then they become 18th instead of 20th. So, like that Cesar Alves had Columbia kind of make a magic run. And, we've talked about this a lot, but it just bears repeating. If one guy wins the nationals with no bonus, that's 20 points. If 10 guys make the round of 12 with no bonus, that's 20 points. I think we know who's going to freaking win the dual meet. It's going to be 9-1 for the team that had all the guys in the round of 12. And for people to understand, the round of 12, in that example, they could have all made the quarterfinals, all lost, and all lost. All had 2 cracks at being All-Americans. So, that's 20 points. So just to give people perspective. A couple of other things that shook out to me, GT, like if they did the seeds exactly off of this, Oklahoma State would wrestle Rutgers, Ohio State would wrestle Maryland, and North Carolina would wrestle Stanford. You really hope they flip those for the teams so that Ohio State could wrestle North Carolina and Stanford could wrestle Maryland and not have an in-conference duel. Like, I think that's a reasonable request. You flip the 14 and the 15 seed, they're 1 point apart in the national rankings or the national scoring. So I don't think that's a big deal. Iowa State would wrestle Oklahoma and Minnesota would wrestle Pittsburgh. I think you could see Oklahoma and Pittsburgh flipping so that, again, Oklahoma already wrestles Iowa State, excuse me. Then North Carolina State would wrestle Little Rock. Virginia Tech Mizzou would be an awesome duel. So, and then Wyoming and Arizona State would have to wrestle each other, and they're in the same conference. But if they're willing to make those tweaks at the bottom, and the reason I'm not saying this with no experience, like we've done this at the Hall of Fame and the Fab 50 duels, like that's what you do to try to keep the top teams happy. And actually the bottom teams would prefer to wrestle somebody they're not going to wrestle again. Like that's the point. They're coming for the money, but they're coming for different matchups. And as an individual, like maybe Maryland's not going to beat anybody else, but Branson John gets to wrestle a different guy that's going to, make a bigger difference in where he's at in the bracket, so to speak. So there's some interesting things on that. I actually think if they did it, I would do it where I would go to the very first weekend of the year. Like the other thing that we've mentioned before but didn't mention this time is this is the week after CKLV, and that's why Michigan didn't go. Like Michigan has to go to CKLV. They're a Cliff King club. Cliff King's in Ann Arbor. Like they don't have a choice. So, I mean, that's a thing. And then you have Iowa's like, we already duel Oklahoma State, Nebraska scheduled Oklahoma State. So now they're like, we don't really need all these other duels. They're mostly Big Ten duels. So a couple of other things. I think we have time, Grant, so we'll get to this. I'll go kind of the least complicated to most complicated portal stuff. Adrian Meza, there's another Iowa State news, went from Iowa State to Arizona State. And this kind of felt like I kind of thought that was going to happen, right? Like he's from there. I know he's extremely close with like Larkin. And, they needed help down low, so it kind of helps them out. So then the second one is Jackson Smith to Ohio State. And I'm on WrestleStat, and it's very interesting. WrestleStat has like Kill Carry listed at 25. Davino is their 33, with both Mills and Munaretto as backups. Buzakis at 41 with Carson Brown as a backup. Cade Brown at 49 with Maddox Shaw as a backup. And I don't know if Maddox Shaw will stay little. Brandon Cannon and Ethan Stiles both at 57. Burton at 65. Jackson Smith at 74. And then Fishback with Adam Waters. Shoemate, Rogotsky. And they only have Feldman as the only heavyweight on the roster. So I guess let's talk about those two. Meza and Jackson Smith.
Well, I think, when you start kind of figuring out coaching changes and or portal transfers, I think one of the things that you start to see is a little bit maybe more of like where opportunities are maybe better for you, or if you're like wanting to be maybe a part of like a better team of some sort, or just getting an opportunity in order to compete where you might not have been able to compete at the previous location. So there's many reasons why these transfers happen, or like how you get to a point where you have someone like Jackson Smith, who's already really good, and then all of a sudden he winds up at a really good institution at Ohio State. You never know like exactly what the reasonings are for that. But I think Ohio State is going to benefit tremendously by having that man in their lineup, and is going to be a great addition to an already stellar team. I think the same thing can be said about Meza, where coaching change at Iowa State, maybe there was a conversation that happened about where you're going to be at in the lineup. Are you going 25-33? What's going to happen? And then basically getting an opportunity to go to Arizona State or go back home. It's going to benefit a lot of different institutions where this transfer portal helps maybe those teams like an Arizona State, who was already maybe a five-guy potential All-Americans, to now you're influxing another 2 guys that were never had an opportunity that could be All-Americans for you. So all of a sudden you go from maybe 5 wins per duel, if everything goes correct, to now maybe like 6, 7 in that lineup, right? You're adding a lot of firepower to a team that was already needing maybe a better dual meet representation because they were a tournament team in Arizona State. Now, I think you maybe could win some more duels if you add a couple more guys or a couple more pieces to that already stellar roster.
Yeah, if you look at Arizona State and you're an optimist, you have Castillo, and I might be saying wrong, maybe it's Meza, not Meza, but I'll be consistently wrong or right and say Meza. And then Manville and Larkin are going to be 41, 49, some combination. I don't know who they have at 57, but then Ruiz, Larkin are going to be 65, 74. They added Aiden Bernat, who's around a 12 guy at 84. And they have the Zuba, and I don't want to call him the little brother, the younger brother, who's 6'7". So they got like eight guys that, if you're them, you're like, we have 8 guys that can All-American. I think realistically, maybe it's 4, but you have 8 guys who are going to help you win a lot of duels. And your point is well taken. Like Arizona State, the last 5 years been really good at the tournament, with the exception of, 1 year, but they've not been a good dual meet team. Like, I mean, the year they lost to Little Rock got Neil Ersman the coach of the year. So, and then they boat raced them at nationals. So I think that fan base is like, look, we're tired of, hey, we'll get them in March. We'll get them in March. Like, let's not stink the whole year. And, I think they're a team that will be, they may not, I think I'm super high on the Larkins, and they only had 2 All-Americans last year. And I think the Larkins will All-American, and so will Ruiz again. So I think they're going to have at least 3. And heavyweight's not real deep. So I think that Zuba kid could be 4. So they go from 4 to 2, but I think they're going to be way better in duels. I mean, like they got killed at the national duels. They were out of it, 3 hours after it started. And then, but they'll be better at both levels on that. The Lorenzo Norman one, Grant, is wild to me. Like, he's got, I think, 3 years of eligibility left. Let me pull up Oklahoma State here because, like, and if you're Oklahoma State or you're David Taylor, you got to stack talent. But here's their lineup right now. At 25, Spratley with Zinkin sitting. 33, Forrest with Ramirez and Jaden Rainey sitting, and John Smith's on there. 41, they have listed Tegan Jamison, Cale Hughes, J.J. McComas, Jordan Rainey, Jake Hamady. 49, Sergio Vega, Colder Burton, Bo Hickman. 57, Robideau, Cutter Sheets. 65, Ladarian Lockett, Casey Swiderski, Cody Rutledge, Ishmael Guerrero, Luke Hamady. Now 74, Lorenzo Norman, Alex Facundo, Zach Ryder. 84, Bennett Berge, Mikey White, Ethan Teague. 97, Cody Merrill, Austin Johnson. Heavyweight, Drayshawn Ross, Ben Maurer, Hayden Simpson. And Penn State's lineup is going to look exactly like this too, where there's this really good dude sitting. And I think there's an interesting psychology lesson here, Grant, where, like, let's say you were better than me, but you were a senior and I'm an incoming freshman. The old school was, okay, well, I get to work out with Grant every day. I get to redshirt. I get to acclimated to college. I get to learn from him, even if it's just how to be a professional, so to speak, how to be a college athlete. Probably going to beat the crap out of me, but I'll eventually learn some things from that. And then I get my 4 years. That's no longer the psychology lesson. I think these super high-level schools are going to have to sell these kids on that. Because if it's like, no, I want all 5 years, you're going to see a bunch of guys off rosters that literally have to move. And like, I was talking to a coach, and we were talking about a school that had a returning national champion, and they have a very good prospect behind that person. And the coach is like, it doesn't matter what happens in the wrestle off. Like, you don't take a guy out of the lineup that won nationals. Like, you would get killed in the court of public opinion, and you get killed by your boosters. And you probably get killed by your athletic director. Because what happens in T-shirts and shorts is not the same as what happens in singlets on Saturday. So Lorenzo Norman, the other thing is he's really good. Mark and I were talking about this off air. Like his coming out party to me was when he wrestled Dustin Plott really close one year at Vegas. I think he beat Nelson Brands that same season. And he may become a national champion, but he hasn't even placed yet. So it's interesting to see that. And they said Penn State was in on him. I found that almost impossible to believe. I mean, you have Will Henkel, you have Asher Cunningham, and you have Jaden James, who's going to be huge. Maybe he just goes right past it to 84 or something. But your thoughts on this one?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack on a lot of that. And I think for an example, I'll use this as an I don't know, just as a example or a caveat to the whole thing is late maturing athletes where they're not necessarily into their full grown man body yet. I think there's a lot of that where the 5-for-5 in, let's say, a different sport other than wrestling is a understanding what life is away from home and the college experience where, like, if you're a 6'7" offensive guard in football, you aren't ready to step onto a Division I football field, and you need that year to understand like what it is in order to be at the Division I level for football. And now, once again, I think that in wrestling, it's a little bit easier, as we've seen in the past probably decade, where kids are coming out of high school Division I ready and to be able to compete for a national title as a true freshman. I think you're seeing that a lot more on the scene for a lot of these collegiate athletes. I don't know what that looks like for other sport categories such as basketball, football, lacrosse, soccer, if they're that maturation period of having a redshirt year, of understanding how academics, how the university works, your weight program, strength program, whether or not you get to wrestle with Dave Mirikitani and Mark Ostrander for a year in order to help you grow. I don't know how all of that benefits some of those other sport categories, because if you're looking to play all 5 years in, let's say, football or another sport, you may try to go somewhere that maybe it's a little bit easier for you to make that transition from high school football to Division I Power 5 conference football.
Right.
So I use that as an example because I think that there's many guys that I wrestled with in college, or the people that had a different experience, where that redshirt year was so impactful for them to either mature into their collegiate body or learn how to do academics at a Power 5 school, where you come from a classroom size of 25 to 35, and all of a sudden now you're sitting in a 500 or 600 person lecture hall. There's a lot of growing up that happens outside of the sport. But I also think that inside the sport, for certain athletics, they need a year to figure that out. So I think for Lorenzo Norman, we all know that he's very capable, and he, in that weight class, kind of has the ability to be a little bit more wide open than some of the others. And I think that you plug somebody in like that right away, he could be a top 3, top 4 guy immediately coming out in September. So it's impactful, and it's going to be an interesting scenario that will play out here in the next coming months and years on what 5-for-5 or what this looks like for collegiate wrestling.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. I think there's something else to think about, right? Like, and that's the end game for some of these sports, right? Like, okay, we're all pretty familiar with football and basketball, right? So like basketball, the rule is you can have 1 year and then go. Football, I think it's 3 years and you can go, but there's millions of dollars waiting for you if you're able to make the league. Okay.
Mhm.
And the NIL money, I mean, Danny Hurley, I get Danny and Bobby. I think it's Danny Hurley though, because Bobby was the one that played at Duke and Danny's his brother that's the coach at UConn. But he said they had a kid that was going to be a late first round draft pick. And he could make more money by staying at UConn than going into the league. Okay. There is no other place. There's no other place to get money in college wrestling except college wrestling. Like, I think it's awesome that REF is paying these guys, but they can't pay them, $1 million a year or $500,000 a year. I mean, like, I think if REF, if you're doing well there, you're making $100,000 a year. Okay. And you either have to be a world medalist or an influencer, like those are kind of, what they've done with those guys so far. So I think that it's just like, I saw another coach, I think Scott Green put it on his blog or whatever they do on the Intermat mailbag, which I like, by the way, a lot. You shout out Earl and Scott Green. They're like, it's going to become more haves and have-nots, right? And so some of it's going to be, well, Grant, you may not start this year, but you're getting $400,000, or you can go over here to Ostrander University and start, but they don't have the resources we do. We beat them every year, and you're going to get a full scholarship. And so really, is this year of you thinking you're good enough, if you can't start, then you're not going to win nationals because you're at least one guy you can't beat. So let's just say you're behind the best guy and you're the second best guy. Is that worth $400,000? And then are you going to make that up? Because if you become second at nationals, then everybody else is going to NIL you. And that was kind of the Ben Askren argument for not going to Iowa right away. It's like, go to Iowa second. Go somewhere, place, like do the Nasir Bailey thing, do the Mikey Caliendo thing, do the Buchanan thing. So it's going to be interesting. The other thing that's interesting, like I just looked at their roster because you're talking about it. They have 32 guys on the roster. So they got to cut 2 guys. And what's weird is I think they have to cut these guys by the first competition, not by the first day of school. So then these kids, when they get cut, they can't go anywhere else. They certainly can't get money. There's no portal then. So, I mean, like, they need to line that stuff up. And it's tough if you're a coach. Like, if you're Nick Mitchell or Grant Henderson, to use examples that are very close to you, you want depth. You want guys. And your depth is different because it's your best 12. But you guys also have an amazing dual meet record. You guys are the opposite of we don't care about dual meets. Like, you guys put it on the line every time against anybody that'll wrestle you. I mean, you intentionally broke a winning streak to wrestle Iowa State. So, I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't have won the meet, but I think the odds were long on you winning it. So that's going to be something that shakes out of all this, and no one's talking about it right now, and they need to. So, the money giveth and the money taketh away. So it's going to be fascinating. Okay, we actually covered more topics than I thought we would, GT, which is awesome. There's a couple other things, but we'll probably end up talking about U20s and U23s next week. And then we're still a few weeks away from Final X. But if it's slow, it might be fun to preview some Final X matchups in a little more detail. I will tell you, I am picking Amit Elor in 2 if you would like to take anything other than that. So get up early on the wings betting board. So, all right, for Grant and for Mark, who's not with us, I'm David. Thank you guys for watching and listening.